for the person who's pregnant when they don't want to be, when they can't afford to expand their family or start a family, it is an emergency. We have plans for our lives.
We all agree we've got to stop the madness in this country, these mass murderers who are killing innocent children.
We have this idea that pregnancy is always beautiful and easy and planned and wanted, and that's just not the case. Pregnancy is one of the most dangerous things we as reproductive age people will ever do in a developed country.
We recognize that an abortion has two victims. Obviously the unborn child, and the other victim is the woman who's the birth mother, who probably got talked into the abortion by a boyfriend, a friend, a mother, a grandmother.
And that was the little intro. So welcome to the stream. So I'm joined by 2DayDavid and Daniel Ray, and of course I'm here. We are reviewing a video of mine which had a topic of abortion. That's hence the little intro. I guess, David, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is David. I and my friend 2DayDavid here go around talking to people. With the whole thing is we asked people, explain it to me like I was born yesterday. And so far, I've learned a lot of things. And I have a lot of fun talking to people. So here I am again.
Cool. And Daniel, if you want to say anything, introduce yourself.
I'm Daniel Ray. I am a staff apologist with Watchman Fellowship in Arlington, watchman.org. And I've been there for about 4 years. I do podcasts. I have conversations with people of all different faiths and no faiths. I'm in 2 atheist book clubs, and occasionally I show up on an SE video every once in a while.
Like this one.
Hey.
Like this one. Yeah.
This one. And then I also got something from that Navigate with Nate created yesterday. It is a rubric. And I figured we could, reference this every once in a while as we're going through. I don't know how much we'll utilize it, but I thought it was pretty cool. So you
can tell he works in education.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Now, Pierce, is this, as I looked over this, you sent it to me this afternoon. This looks like it's primarily for the SE practitioner, not necessarily for the interlocutor, correct?
Correct. Yeah, this would be kind of like a grading system of sorts, I suppose you could say. Just another tool to kind of review if you're doing it according to the SE course, which is what I'd like to do anyway.
Good to go. Right. Yeah, but if you want to, if I get off track or anything, just keep me on track. It's your don't want to be sidetracked with little rabbit trails with me. So just reel me in, both of you. Just please.
Same for me, honestly.
We're all good at gab.
All right. Without further ado, then we'll get started.
All right. So I'm Pierce.
I'm Jenna.
Jenna. Jenna.
Genna.
G?
Yes.
Oh.
My actual name is Genesis.
Oh, nice.
It's a cool name.
Sorry about
I've never heard that name. Very nice.
Yeah.
And I like to ask this for everybody who walks by. What brought you to come and have a chat?
Just intriguing.
Intriguing?
Yeah. Wanted to see what it was about.
Have you ever heard of street epistemology?
No.
Okay. So it's a conversational method where we just chat about something you believe is true. And we just talk about whether we think that, why you think that's, what gets you to think that's true. And, we examine those reasons to see where you're at.
Right.
Make sure this is charging it.
Redo the intro again, that definition again. How do you think you would explain it again?
Well, I wouldn't stumble over my words as much, but
yeah, it happens in the moment. It happens.
Yeah, I would say examine the quality of the reasons for your belief. I think I'd probably phrase it more like that rather than, I don't even know what I said. I just kind of, I don't know, remember what I said. It wasn't good though.
Now, you were talking to 100 people that day, I'm sure.
Yeah, this was that day where it was like one after another after another. So, yeah.
You were talking to 100 people
Nice.
We got an
Is
echo.
it the
Where'd that come from?
Starbucks? I think it was my phone going off, reminding me that the live stream was on.
Nice.
Pierce, were you distracted by the little Starbucks thing there?
I might have been. I don't know.
You're like, ooh, I want
Does
one
look
of
good.
those, and my mind's got off the script there a little bit.
Maybe.
All right.
Daniel, as somebody who's been around the community, and would tell me your impression of that definition there.
Of street epistemology?
Yeah, that was just said.
That Pierce
if you
used
recall.
in the video?
Yeah.
I think of all the definitions I've seen, when you're in a conversation like that and you are talking to somebody that has never heard of it, I don't want to go into the encyclopedic version of it. You don't want to read verbatim module 1, right? So I think Pierce did a decent summary there. It was so people like on the flip side explain Christianity to me. We were talking about, David, in a sentence or two. Yeah, it's a lot.
It'd be tough on the spot for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's always hard to condense big ideas into small concepts for people that have never heard it. So
yeah,
he handled it well.
Right on.
Yeah, I'll take it. This button. There we go.
Don't want the camera to shut off. So when you first walked up here, you were kind of like, well, I don't know what we can talk about, right? Okay. Is there anything you can think of that you think is true that you'd be comfortable talking? Okay. I can throw out a whole bunch of examples.
Yeah, throw out examples.
Okay. So Veronica just had a conversation with, what was her name? I don't even remember.
Sam.
Sam, that's right. And they talked about her belief in Catholicism. Prior to that, I had a chat and we talked about karma. It doesn't have to be something that's religious or spiritual by any means. Several months ago, I talked to someone about global warming. I'm okay with talking about LGBTQ issues, anything with regards to that. It can really be anything that you think is true.
Have a good one. I think that abortion should be legalized.
Okay.
Everywhere.
Abortion should be legalized everywhere. Okay. Awesome. That is what you believe is true. And how confident are you that is true, that abortion should be legalized everywhere?
Very.
Yeah, that would be asking for the confidence. So where's that? Somewhere in here. I don't know where it is. But anyways, was that a good way to ask for confidence? We'll see her response in a moment.
I'm curious if in those moments, if confidence is the first thing you ask, or something that you ask after you have a clear definition of what they think. Because then it might, upon reflecting and after expanding on their ideas to a degree, to say like, okay, I believe that abortion, which is this, should be legal everywhere, which means this, and I'm this confident in it. But I could be wrong. I mean, I've actually been one who's not been very successful with the confidence scale, so take that with a grain of salt.
I wonder if it would matter which.
Yeah, I'm
order.
also.
Yeah. But
I've also been a critic of the confidence scale. I think it becomes more about the individual's psychological disposition toward a topic than the topic. So it's like you go between like reasons to believe something and a person's confidence. Like, why did I buy a Honda versus a Subaru or something? There are factual reasons, maybe the performance of the engine or the interior, quiet interior, or the electronics or whatever. How confident am I that I bought the right car? It's a completely different. I realize it gets to your reasons, but I think maybe you asked that question. I think I might agree here with David. You asked that question down the road when there's more rapport, because it's a little bit more personal than factual questions about why do you believe that. And I think, maybe you ask somebody why they're confident after you've established a little bit more relational rapport with somebody. I mean, that happens with me with Christianity. I don't walk up to people who are not Christians and say, how confident are you in your atheism or something? It usually comes through the natural course of getting to know somebody. But I think for the way SE goes, Pierce, I would say that if you're going to use the confidence skill, use it at a point where you have more rapport with the person, because it is a little bit more of a personal question. At least I think so.
That's actually really useful. Yeah, thank you for that. I often actually forget to ask about confidence altogether, and then sometimes at the tail end.
And I like that.
Yeah.
You are one that doesn't always use it, and I think that's good. I think that's it's a different question than what are the reasons that you believe this. Old school SE, which I know you both are not. I'm not gonna. You're doing things a little differently than Peter Boghossian did, but old school SE, the confidence scale was, hey, get a number out of them and try to knock it down. I'm sure there's still some street epistemologists who use it that way. But I don't see you guys using it that way. I don't think I've ever seen David use the confidence scale in the videos I've watched of him. But I think, again, that's far more of a personal question than a factual one, if I could put it that way. But yeah.
All right. We will keep, wrong one. We will keep rolling.
Very. Okay. What does very mean? Is there anything that could change your mind?
No.
Okay. So would you be comfortable saying that you're 100%
Yes.
convinced? Okay. 100% convinced, nothing could change your mind. Okay.
Kind of similar comment
And-
before. Just feels like something that you want to make sure, at least I'd want to make sure I understood their definition entirely. And we've had the back and forth before I ask if they're 100% convinced on something, especially like what someone pointed out in the comments. It's like a should claim, so it's something that's going to take a little more digging to figure out the factual backings behind it.
Yeah, and this actually comes into play more towards the end of the conversation, so I guess keep this in mind.
Okay, cool.
This button.
Why is this the case? Why are you at 100%?
For the people that wouldn't be able to take care of a child and are in a sticky situation, or don't have the means to buy protection and stuff like that. Some people can't afford that.
Okay.
But humans are they're sexual beings, so obviously it's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then obviously the 1% case scenarios, like rape, incest, all that.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. So what I'm hearing is people should be able to get abortions because people want to have sexual intercourse, assuming you meant. And they might get pregnant because of that. That's obviously a thing that happens. And if they do get pregnant, they might not be able to care for a child if abortion is made illegal, right? So they should be able to get an abortion so that the child isn't not cared for. Is that kind of what
Yes.
you were saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to go through the system.
Okay.
And doesn't have to grow up in a impoverished home.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And you said nothing could change your mind on that. Is there anything that you could learn that might change your outlook? Nothing.
No, I've seen the videos about it.
Okay. Gotcha.
It felt like a little bit of a lead there. I feel like you could have skipped the is there anything that changed your mind? Because right after you ask, is there anything you could have learned? But again, in the
noticed that
moment,
too.
it's This is and honestly, I don't think you've had this conversation with a lot of people.
Abortion, even?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
This
so
was. I think this was my second of the day, though. But
Yeah.
other than that, that was second overall forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to navigate because people have a myriad of different aspects to it, and it's hard to get narrowed down to more foundational reasonings on these things because people have a lot of answers, a lot of social answers, a lot of conviction answers, and it's a tough one
Yeah.
to have the
And
conversation.
I think Pierce to it. I mean, it's commendable you want to have a conversation with a stranger about this topic, but then it's equally difficult, I think, for a man to do this with a woman, especially somebody that you don't know. I mean, you're in public. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a couple months ago, I had made an acquaintance through street epistemology. It was a woman about my age. She was interested in SE and emailed me and wanted to ask me questions about it. As a believer, she was not a believer, but she knew I was. She knew I was critical of SE. We started going back and forth, and the topic of abortion came up. And I said, I was uncomfortable talking about it with her. I mean, that's just the honest truth, because it's such a volatile and emotional. I mean, you don't know this woman. Where are you, on a college campus? Is that where you're at? Yeah. I mean, good grief, you don't know what's going to. I mean, somebody's that confident. It's almost like I would see that to some degree I can empathize with you, Pierce. You're being a little cautious because you're like, man, she's like, and that if you tried to, cross swords with it, you're already kind of in a zone where it's like there's nothing you're going to say that's going to try to change her mind, and if you, it might, it could set her off. You never know, right? Somebody that impassioned about the topic. So hats off to you, man, for having that conversation. It's not easy.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then what I was going to add here was I put the check mark in for asking.
Did we lose Mr. Watkins?
What's that?
What?
It froze on me.
Yeah, me too. Okay. I'm gonna keep talking, and hopefully he comes back. I'm checking the mark for a repetitive question because I felt like I asked exactly the same question 2 times in a row, and that was not good. So
yeah, it's hard to size up a person who comes out with like I wouldn't change my mind, I'm 100% and stuff like that, but you don't know if you're supposed to treat them that way, like give them it's hard to figure out what they're actually looking to talk about. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think Robert has a good point here. I think I said change your mind a few times already, just in those first few minutes. And she might suspect that I'm trying to change her mind. Yeah, which I wasn't.
Right.
But yeah.
That
could come off that way, like very easily.
It's hard running into like a very strong opinion type of situation, no matter what side they're on. So, I might be biased on this, but it might have been a good opportunity to consider trying to switch to the outsider kind of mentality, like where it's a very obviously important topic to them. Maybe where they're 100%, maybe talk about how you could convince somebody else of that same thing, or how someone else could understand what they're saying.
Yeah, and down the road I get to that. But
perfect. Yeah,
it would have been
remember that now.
Might have been better if I went with that first, but well, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally understand that.
All right, Daniel's back, Daniel? So we can continue. I think, unless he's frozen.
I think he's still frozen.
That's not good.
Yeah.
Okay, we might continue anyways. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Hopefully he will reconnect at some point here.
if there was like something, and this is largely hypothetical, if there was a place in the world where children wouldn't have to, parents wouldn't have, potential parents wouldn't have to worry about a potential child being taken care of.
So this is kind of like my real reason check
Yeah.
of sorts. Hypothetical, if this wasn't the case, if this reason wasn't available, that's basically what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If they could go somewhere and be taken very, very well care of, everything met, fantastic life, fantastic upbringing, right? How would you feel about that particular place in the world for abortion?
I would still believe that abortion should be legal because that is still you putting your body through something very traumatic. And some people don't want to do that or can't live through that.
Okay.
Or have medical conditions where they can't do that easily.
Right. Okay.
I heard her just give me like a whole bunch of more reasons, like list off a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that first reason was just like, doesn't seem like the reason.
Yeah.
It was just like that didn't really matter, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, like it matters,
exactly
but it's like if that thing wasn't brought up, they'd have plenty of other things that they still care about it with.
It must not be a big, significant piece of that pie, I guess, sorts. Since,
Daniel, you still here?
Is he here? He's here. He's back.
Can you see me?
Yeah, and there you are. Welcome back. We missed you.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
went
know
through
what's
about
my
10
internet, I
seconds
don't
of the
know
video.
what's
Well,
I
hopefully-
can see and hear you. I can't see or hear Piers. Sorry, everybody.
Oh,
Technical difficulties.
that's not good.
There he is.
Well,
There's Piers.
we were talking about how Pierce went back with like a hypothetical to say, you know, if children were cared for in all situations, and there would be no worry about them not having a good life, would that change her opinion on it at all? And she said no, and then she gave a multitude of other reasons to justify why she thinks it should be legal in all cases. So that's what we're going with there. And so the question is like, how do you find out where to talk about? How do you not spend all day talking about 20 different small reasons whenever you're trying to figure out the big reason on all of it?
Mm-hmm. I think it's the hardest thing about street epistemology has been in the past for me, I think, in assuming that there's just one reason or a big reason why somebody believes something, when I really think that a lot of our beliefs are multifaceted in what influence us and why we believe. So I think, and in an off the top of your head casual conversation, you're asking for a main reason, and a person wanting to be cordial with somebody they've just met will try to come up with one. But I think in truth, the question is often misguided that there's only one reason or a main reason. And I think the interlocutor, wanting to be gracious and kind in the conversation, especially if they're on camera, will give a main reason. And then the street epistemologist will try to work that down. But in truth, I think, as David said, there are 20 or 30 different things maybe that influence somebody. So I think maybe rather than saying like the main reason, pick a reason to focus on. You know, maybe that's a better way to word it. You know, there's all these different facets to this question. Instead of maybe saying what's the main reason, well, what's one aspect of this that you'd like to focus on and talk more about in detail? You know, maybe that's something to consider. But I think with this lady where she's at right now, I think in one sense, she's probably a lot like all of us wherever we stand on this issue, that I'm not changing my mind about this topic. A lot of people are like that in this discussion. And so in that sense, I think she's trying to express her certitude about that. And I think a lot of people, both sides of the question, are very passionate, like your intro shows, Pierce. People are definitely like, you know, I'm not changing my mind on this. So that's always a hard conversation to enter into when you have people going, right? So difficult. It's like tightrope, man. Especially with a total stranger who's a woman. That's hard, very hard.
For sure. All right, we'll see where I go with it.
Okay, gotcha. So it seems like these are two different reasons. So it sounds like one reason is, for the child, potential child. And the other reason is kind of about bodily autonomy?
Yes.
Okay. Which reason is more, I guess, gets you to that 100%? Is it more about the child or more about the bodily autonomy?
Bodily autonomy.
Bodily autonomy. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. I guess, why is that the case? Why should people have this bodily autonomy to be able to have an abortion?
Because if you are the one that is giving the cells the right to grow in your body, and if you don't want to have something grow in your body, you shouldn't make it or let it.
Okay. So it's kind of like you're the land owner, and you kind of take in a tenant, kind of, and you have the right to kind of evict said tenant.
Yes.
Sure. If someone were to stop by and they heard us talking about this and they wanted to join, and they were 100% that abortion should be legal everywhere, what do you think would be their best argument that they would say?
Their best argument?
Yeah.
I think that their best argument would be, well, that's killing a child.
Okay.
Or that could be the next, that person could cure cancer or just blown out of the water.
Okay. And I guess why is that? I'm assuming, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I would assume you don't think that it's a very good reason to believe that abortion should be illegal.
I understand it to a point,
Okay.
but even with that, you still shouldn't, it still goes against, you should not make somebody carry a child if they don't want to or put their body through that.
I guess why, okay, so the reason why that reason isn't a very good reason for you is because bodily autonomy is more important than the life of the fetus. Is that a good word to use, I think?
No, I don't remember. It's like a clump of cells. I don't remember.
Okay.
A fetus is way down the line.
Gotcha.
So.
Fair enough. Let me reword it then, because I want to use the most appropriate words. So you would say that the right to bodily autonomy has a greater importance than can we say the life of the clump of cells? Is that appropriate? Okay. Than the life of the clump of cells?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And why is
At this
that
point,
the
Pierce, I would
case?
say I don't know if it would have been a rabbit trail, but I think it would be found to the conversation to ask her what she thinks about when life begins. Because that's a step, you were sitting here talking about fetus, clump of cells, blastocyst, whatever terms are being used in this debate scientifically. People are very impassioned about terms, as she was. You notice how she corrected you. Fetus is way down the line. She's just
Mm-hmm.
a clump of cells is a really interesting point of view. So, maybe a clarifying question about, well, what is life? Is it a clump of human cells, or is it a multi-celled human? How many cells does it take to make a human being? How many cells must you lose to not become a human being, to lose your humanity? Is there a number? These are interesting questions, but I think a foundational question at this point would be, what is her conception of when life begins?
I think you're spot on. I think I should have asked what that clump of cells is, and then listen to her definition, obviously, and then go from there.
Yeah.
I think at the very beginning, it was kind of an opportunity to to ask her definition of what an abortion was, then that would make her define some terms such as what is being aborted and what the woman is choosing in that regard, and maybe even talking about the legal thing. That's also potentially another. But to me, it feels like you've almost having the conversation 4 or 5 steps down the road without getting to the making sure you're on the bottom level of the same.
I tend not to ask people their definitions, and maybe I should start doing that more often. But
the question on the table is, abortion should be legal. I mean, it was for a while. Roe versus Wade, 1973, but Roe versus Wade was based on the 14th Amendment, and that was based on slavery coming in 19th century. That former slaves would have rights, and that nobody would be death. No one's life would be taken except through a due process of law. This is the 14th Amendment, and the courts, of course, as you know, recently struck down Roe versus Wade, using this argument in a sense that there's nothing in the 14th per se that would support the liberty or the idea of abortion being part of the liberty that's covered in the 14th Amendment. The actual legalese of the 14th Amendment, upon which abortion was legalized in 73, was based on the idea of, it was interesting because the clause itself, 14th Amendment, says nobody's going to be denied life or liberty without due process of law. So if I was being cheeky there, I might have asked her, what's the are you familiar with Roe versus Wade? I mean, this is going way off the table, but how can we use the 14th Amendment that says nobody will be deprived of life without due process of law? How can we use that clause to support abortion? This is the legal side of things. That would have been an interesting question. Maybe too much for rapport building. I don't know. Too detrimental, too heavy at the beginning. But since the legal aspect is on the table, that might be an interesting way to go too. What should we? Does she think that legalizing this? It is a moral issue, right? It is a moral issue. You can't legislate morality, but let's face it, morality or legislation is morality, right? It's what you should and shouldn't do. So a discussion about what is legal would be interesting at this point. But again, this is not in relation to how you're doing it, SE Pierce. I'm just babbling at this point. So
yeah, it would have been a really good thing to bring up if I was debating her. That would have been terrific.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, but how do you slide that big concept in an SE conversation? I don't know.
I think
there might be a
that
way.
Would have to be kind of the topic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
How could you bring that up in an SE conversation? That sounds like an interesting concept.
Yeah, the legal. I mean, just what do you mean by legal? See what she says. You define legal.
Pierce, a second ago you said you don't typically ask people their definitions. Is that by choice or just by working on the practice?
It's due to overexcitement.
Yeah.
I just want to get going in the conversation. It's just like, forget it all. Let's just get going. And yeah, it's just a bad habit. I really should get more clarity on some of the definitions. I think that would serve me well.
My advice to you, Pierce, I know you kind of starting out with this, but if you go watch old Anthony Magnabosco videos, the guy's just doing what he likes to do. I mean, yeah, he's an atheist, but he's just having fun, man. And I'm going to tell you, I think maybe there's a little bit too much in you of wanting to be on point with the methodology. And you obviously like talking to people. And I would say, whether or not your friends think this is SE, man, just go out and have fun with it. I mean, just do what Pierce likes to do. And I mean, nobody's going to kick you out of the SE community for being a little different, but I think that's how this whole thing got started, was because Anthony went out and did what he liked to do. I mean, the guy does like talking to people, and he's pretty good at it. So, and he wouldn't say that he owns the method, but Pierce, if you do what you enjoy doing and you just not you're not throwing the script out, you're not trying to buck the system. You're just trying to do what you like to do and do it the way Pierce is cut out to do this. I think you should probably be less worried about the technical side of things and focus on the conversation and wherever it goes as it's in front of you. And then if an SE thing comes up in your mind, then throw it out there. But I'm kind of like you. I'm like, I get into a conversation, I'm like, let's go, and I'm like,
exactly.
This is how I do interviews, Pierce. I just interviewed a philosopher, a published author for our podcast, and I'm like all over the place. I brought up Popeye, the cartoon, because a comment he made reminded me of Popeye, and you just go that way. I was just, hey, that's the question I'm going to ask, and I think you should probably just, I just sit there and tell you, I don't say throw the script away, but just do what you like to do, Pierce, and don't worry about the technical side so much. Just do what Pierce does.
I think generally my better conversations are when I just naturally comes out. Just what happens. Yeah.
You need to follow that. You got to think about it. This is how street epistemology started. One guy who likes what he's doing and he's good at it goes out and does all this stuff, and everybody's like, "Ooh, I want to do that," but they're not Anthony. David's David. You're Pierce. Everybody's got a little personality they bring to the table. Don't cram yourself into a little corner to impress your friends. Just be Pierce. David's bucking the system with his little cardboard dude there. I've never seen that before. That's good. That's the creative thing. That's what I like to be. I'm like, I didn't stay in teaching very long because I was too creative for my administrators. So I'm doing this Watchman thing now, so it's a lot of fun. But anyway, that's my advice to you, man. Be creative and have fun, and just on the script, don't worry about it so much.
Appreciate it. I think you'll see that creativity in a little bit here.
But that Starbucks thing is getting to me. I want one.
It does look good.
It does.
Like they, hold on, let me think. I am like a living human being. I'm out, like I'm, here, and a clump of cells can't do anything. So obviously, like a whole being that is already here is more important than
a clump of cells that can't do anything. That might have been a side claim. That might be a little pin that I might put in and come back to later, maybe. That was interesting what you said.
That's a doozy, though. I know you stop growing at a certain point, but I'd be like, well, when's the last time you grew fingers? It's amazing what that thing does, what it does, the developmental gene regulatory system in and of itself looks like circuitry of a computer system. That's what tells the cells what to be. Look that up. They've made a schematic of purple sea urchins from a gene regulatory system. It's amazing. So the whole. But see, I'm not good at SE. I just come right out and say it. Look, lady. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. When's the last time you grew an arm, or grew fingers, or made your own teeth? Come on, right? But I would not be good at it. That's why I'm a critic of it. So anyway, proceed.
Daniel, can you imagine a scenario at which you had an SE conversation with somebody on this topic, and you made it all the way through all these different social answers and steps, and then you got to the part at which they felt they were most passionate about, that, like really like this is one of the things that I really focus on. And then you can have the conversation there. Then you could start with your debate. Then you could start with your laying out your information, your 14th Amendment.
Yeah, I when I do interviews, it's not street epistemology. I'm just trying to talk to people who are smarter people than I who write books. So I'm kind of in the same boat with you, in a sense. I got to come up with questions, and I prepare sometimes, but sometimes I'm like, throw away the script because he just went somewhere I wasn't prepared for, even though I read the book. So it's that ability to think on your feet and kind of go where the conversation goes and not try to stick to it. Pierce, I was kind of hard on you when you started because I was like, dude, you're on a script. You sound like a robot, man. And, I know you were passionate about it, but it's like, I think that's the default of new people coming to SE. They want to stick to the script to gain acceptance. and they're afraid of being creative. And so I agree with you, David. I think that would be perfectly fine to get to that point of all that, and find that sweet spot where you and the other person can have some agreement, get to know each other, have a little bit of fun, poke at each other a little bit. And, rapport in this is very important, as you both know, that you can't have a conversation like this without rapport. And I know that, Pierce and I have some rapport. You have a little back and forth, but I don't have this conversation with you guys if we didn't have some rapport, So that's important. And the more I think you have of that, the more rapport, personality, creativity, the more genuineness that's brought into the conversation, not for the sake of keeping to a script, but for the sake of being who you are and really wanting to know what the other person thinks. That's going to come across. And when that comes across and the other person knows you're listening to them, you can do anything. I say that's what Anthony, I don't agree with Anthony about a lot of things, but that's what he's good at. He can build that rapport, elicit those questions. Some of them are difficult.
Yeah. But he has some techniques to a degree.
He does. Yeah, he does.
Grounding behaviors that help keep him on track. And that's, I think, what SE has developed is an effort to keep you from following the rabbit trails and coming at with the emotional responses. And
I will
attacking the person instead of the actual ideas.
Yeah. It's a good way to if I say anything good about it, it's a good way to find yourself to not be a jerk. I mean, in the sense, just bottom line, they're good techniques for going, wait a minute, hold on a second. Because I can heat up a conversation pretty quickly. I just have to kind of watch myself a little bit more. But so, SE's good for that. I agree. I'm not saying it's bad to have a script. Christians have scripts. Philosophers have scripts. We all have things that we recite to people, So anyway, yeah, good points, David. I agree.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll keep going.
It's like something that hasn't even been born yet.
If instead of a clump of cells, I'm assuming this is very early on in a pregnancy. I don't know a lot about it. If it was like later in the pregnancy where it was more than a clump of cells, let's say what a pregnancy is 9 months, let's say it was, in the 8th month or something.
I don't think that's really an abortion at that point. That's like an early delivery. But in any case, the hypothetical stands, I think.
Would that change anything for you?
No, in some cases, because some people don't know that they're pregnant until they literally give birth, or they're way far along.
Yeah.
So if it was one of those cases, I could see, but otherwise, catch it early. That it's your responsibility to catch it early.
Okay, your responsibility. So let's say this individual is 8 months pregnant, and they want to, or should it be legal for them to have an abortion at that point?
In specific cases.
In specific cases, so maybe if the child, I don't want to say child, let's say fetus, is that more appropriate? Let's say they're not doing well inside. Would that be a reason, or what would be the circumstance?
If it could not live a good life out of the womb, then yes.
Maybe you were given an example.
Parents
I feel like you were given an example to try to build rapport, to say you kind of understand where they're coming from, but you're also kind of giving them an example. I almost would have left it at what could be some circumstances that wouldn't, and just kind of give her a second to think on that.
It was leading, and I didn't intentionally mean it to be leading. What I was trying to do was to give an example that she had already given, but unfortunately I flubbed that and gave an example she didn't give. So
she gave a lot of examples. So it's hard to. I can get that.
That's what I was trying to do. I should have just left it open-ended. That would have been so much better. Then I wouldn't have had to worry about that. But yeah.
Financially or mentally support the child, raise the child. Would that be a good reason?
No. At that point, that would go to
what
the system.
What would be a good reason?
like if you didn't know that you were pregnant,
Didn't know you were
because you can spot throughout pregnancy.
So the bodily autonomy becomes more important if you don't know.
Yes. Because you weren't given the option to, or the opportunity to make that choice earlier if you did not know.
I'm wondering if should it be the responsibility of a person to kind of figure that out before it gets to that point?
Yes.
Okay. But they should. But if they don't figure it out, if they're pregnant,
Yeah.
then they should have the ability, the legal right to have an abortion. If they don't,
If you like legitimately did not know, like still got your period throughout your pregnancy, like that, then I could understand it a little bit, but it's still not like fully.
so if it was like really obvious, but they said that they didn't know, then that probably wouldn't be
No.
one fly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can tell it's a really
what if it was
empathetic
really
person
obvious,
in a lot
but
of ways. Like, you can tell that she's like that's not like a hard science answer. That's like I could see that being a struggle situation. I could imagine that being overwhelming, like kind of thing. Like, I mean, you could see just this is like an empathy situation, like in a lot of her things. I just wanted to comment that although she's being like very kind of direct and cut to the point or whatever, or like very kind of stern with her language, you could tell that from her perspective, I think she's trying to be empathetic. Obviously, others might disagree because of the consideration of the fetus or and everything like that. But
Yeah.
I don't exactly know where I was going with that. I just wanted to say something nice.
I'm wondering if I should have even gone down this particular like line of questioning. I don't know. I'm not. It seems like a side chat, like a totally kind of not completely relevant. I don't know. It seems just like a rabbit hole that probably didn't need to be gone down. I'm not sure though.
Well, that's hey, Pierce, join the club. I mean, I do these interviews myself, and a lot of stuff hits the cutting floor, and I listen to myself and I go, "Oh, why did I ask that?" You know, I embarrassed myself sometimes with my rabbit trails. I was like, "Dude, just close your mouth, please." I was like, I don't even. It took me a long time to even get used to my voice, let alone watching myself on video. But don't kick yourself too hard, man. I mean, it's there's. I tell people all my mistakes are on YouTube for 16,000 people to see. You know, it's hard when you're on camera that way. And I think it must. I've said this before to lots of people in SE. The whole camera thing has got to be affecting everybody involved in this to some extent. You are hyper conscious about what's going in and what's going on. And I think, what would be different if you had this conversation without the accoutrements of street epistemology? I know you're trying to capture and learn and grow from this, and I'll get that. That's fine, but it's got to affect how we have conversations. That's why, spoiler alert here, that's why Daniel likes to have conversations with people not recorded, because it's different. And I try to balance that. So if people talk to me off camera or on camera, I'm the same person. I really try to strive for that. And I think if you are striving for genuineness on and off camera, you can master and just forget the camera or the microphones there. But that's hard. I mean, so you're probably operating under some angst, a little bit of anxiety about
I think I've heard
how
it
this
called
is looking.
Absolutely. I think I've heard it called a second order observation. Like we're thinking, we're watching, or we're thinking about ourselves, other people looking at us while we think about how we're projecting. It's like we're watching ourselves in third person.
Part of your brain, right? Yep. And good point, David. Part of your brain is operating on that and taken away from the other part of the brain that's trying to have a conversation.
But I mean, our lives are becoming so kind of profile based in general.
Oh gosh,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's almost more common now. I'd say
it is starting to. Yeah, right.
You're probably not pushing that much more envelope actually filming people as you did 10 years ago.
Right. But the thing for what you guys do in SE, with these review shows, I'm sure that you guys who do these things are going, what if somebody wants to review this? I know that Nate is watching. I know maybe Anthony's watching. You know, it's good because you guys are all, to your credit, to some degree, you're all in a community where you're trying to refine and critique each other to do better. So for me, you know, in that environment, it wouldn't be so much the camera as it would be the peer pressure, to put it in vernacular. You know, what are my peers going to think of what I'm saying? And you know, in the world of podcasts, it's hard because you have to do something clickbaity, right? Today, you got to have some kind of gimmick, and
you got to put a blindfold on yourself for the thumbnail.
That Pierce, you know, I mean, and then you got to deliver. You got to deliver. I mean,
where's your blindfold now?
Where's your blind? Come on, man. You know, I met Pierce when he was all dark and mysterious. You know. And I even think I guessed his real name at one point. I don't know. He still hasn't told me. But
Pierce in the Shadows.
We won't go. Yeah, the Shadow Knows. You know that old radio show?
I don't. I can look it up.
It's great. You ought to listen to it. You can listen to it on YouTube. Anyway, where are we going and what did I do? See what happens when I don't have an SE script? This is what I do. So go on, my friend. Go on.
We'll continue.
They weren't quite mentally capable of understanding it. Would that be a good reason? Or if they were just kind of being a silly goose or something?
Like they weren't like mentally there, or
I guess
like
that's just
they don't pay
silly
attention.
goose.
Yeah, they're not.
I've
really
never heard that in
paying
an SE
attention.
conversation, Pierce. Silly goose.
Yeah, I really hated that. I really hated what I said there.
Well, you know, you may have just endeared her to you.
Yeah.
But
Maybe
that's
loosen it up a little.
That's a first for street epistemology, and I've been watching it ever since it started, man. I don't think I've heard anybody say that before. I've been around the community longer than y'all have, and I've never heard Anthony Magnabosco say "silly goose."
I think we should.
Maybe Reed said it once. Yeah. Say there as a pregnant silly goose. Yeah.
How confident are you that you're a silly goose right now? 1 to 7.
What if are you thinking of Mother Goose? Was she a silly goose? Yeah. Anyway, we're dragging this one out. Yeah.
And I mean, other people kind of are like, oh, that person looks like they're pregnant. Wonder if they are. But they were like, no way, that's impossible.
Then I don't think it should be.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I want to go back to, so you're 100% confident abortion should be legalized everywhere, and it sounds like it's up to a certain point. It looks like there's some sort of restrictions to some degree, what you've told me. Should we be confident, 100% confident, and nothing else can change our mind about any particular belief?
Wait, what was your question? Sorry.
Should we be 100% confident in any given belief?
Yes.
Should we be open to changing our mind?
Yes, unless it has to do with your morals.
So morals can't be examined, or
I would say, like, if it's something that like you're sure on because it's something that is important to you and helps you, then you should be 100% on it, like bodily autonomy. But if it's just like an opinion about something, then like that should be able to be changed.
if someone had a moral belief about, let's say it's about abortion. They think like every life matters, no matter how many cells it has, and they're very passionate about that. Should that moral be examined?
I would say yes.
Okay, but if they have the belief that abortion should be legalized everywhere, that moral shouldn't be examined?
I feel like it sounds really bad if I say no, but like it makes sense to me.
Okay.
All right, this is a good point. This is your.
Do you think?
your introduction. This was the black and white part I saw, I think, right? This is what
Yep.
you had in the introduction. Yeah, no, it's good. You got her in I say got her. You have her over the barrel here, and you can tell by her facial expressions that you ought to proceed with caution here, unless you want to be a jerk, which you're not. But I think that is a fascinating, is a good question, but I think she set that up herself. You were kind of in tune to that, questioning that idea, but I think an interesting follow-up, maybe you've asked it, an interesting follow-up would be, why should the person who believes in the sanctity of life not question their morals or question their morality, the morals that undergird their belief? And why don't we have to question yours? I think maybe for the first time she's thought about that position. So that's good. But my critique here would be, like, what's going through, well, not my critique, but what you're thinking, what's going through your mind, Pierce, right now as she's saying this? Are you thinking of a follow-up question? Do you know what you're going to ask her, or what were you thinking at this point? Because obviously really you have a moment here where you could, she's, what's the word in the SE, the not cognitive dissonance, but the aphoria.
Aphoria, yeah.
Yeah, you've got that, that's the high dollar SE video thing right there, right? That's why you put it in the front. But what were you thinking at this point? What was going on?
I was just really surprised, because it's just like the double standard there, right? They should be examined, but I'm free from examination. So
yeah,
I really didn't know where to go with that. I don't even, listening back now, I don't even remember where I went with it, because I was just like, wow, I'm really surprised that she has this double standard. So hopefully I asked what you suggested.
Yeah. Do you think we all walk around with things like that in our heads?
Double standards?
You guys? Yeah. Without being aware of it?
Oh, absolutely.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have those double standards, I want someone to make me aware of them.
Did you guys see, it's been a couple of years, but it made the rounds. Did you guys see Nathan Ferguson, abstract activist, get me in a double standard a couple of years ago on video? Have you seen that clip?
You guys had some long talks. I can't remember exactly.
I don't. I didn't watch it all either, so don't worry. But no, he asked me if I wanted to know if reincarnation were true. I said, heck no. I don't want to know it, but what I was doing was being absolutely honest. I mean, if reincarnation is true, I don't have to live like it is. But my point was, he was expecting me to say, yes, I want to know if reincarnation is true, to express open-mindedness, right? So I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to be open-minded, and to show what I really think. And I really think I don't want to know if that is true. Now, I'll listen to somebody tell me about reincarnation, but that kind of turned into Nathan's like, oh, look at Dan, he doesn't want to know this is true. And really what I was saying was expressing it colloquially how unpleasant I think reincarnation is. So if something that awful would be true, I wouldn't want to know it, because I've lived 55. In this case, David, yes, absolutely. I don't want it. Like when I eat chocolate cake at the Cheesecake Factory, do I want to know how many calories are in there at that moment?
Yeah,
No.
I get it.
That's all I was doing. Yeah, that's all I was doing. And Nathan was like, look at Ray, he's so but
well,
I think go ahead, David.
You go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I'm done with it.
Here's the thing that I think at this point of the conversation where I would like to see these kind of conversations go, when they say that the other person has the same kind of moral conviction that I do, but with a different thing, I would focus on what they think the other person needs to do to adjust their view. Because
yeah, that's good.
If their view is 100% and there's nothing that needs to be changed about it, And I mean, we're going to get there, probably talk about it more as time goes along. But I'd want them to try to explain to me what they would have to change, and they might say, well, they need more evidence, they need more of this, but you at the same time they're saying they won't accept more evidence on their end. So it's like, how my goal with SE and all this stuff is to get people on opposite sides thinking about how the other person thinks more clearly. Personally, that's my goal with it.
Steel manning. Tell me argue your opponent's best position, and I think you did try to do that a little bit, Pearson.
Absolutely.
And that's what we do at the atheist. Yeah, we do with our atheist and Christian book club. Try to steel man somebody else's position.
Not only still
straw manning,
empathize with the other person. Yeah. Like to understand that not everybody is just straight up ignoring the things that you see. They're focused on different things, and to understand that the focus.
Right.
We have to get past the external things and start talking about the more epistemological aspects of it. That's my personal prerogative with all this.
Yeah.
All right. We'll continue on.
Yeah.
As a whole, do you think we should be more closed-minded or more open-minded?
Open-minded.
Do you think you're open-minded?
For the most part.
On this belief, do you think you are open-minded?
No.
No. Do you think you should be open-minded?
No.
Hey, Pierce, I have a quick thought on this open-mindedness business. The Christian philosopher, theologian, writer, essayist G.K. Chesterton, I think it's Chesterton, it might be C.S. Lewis, but I think it's Chesterton, said, the whole point of having an open mind is so that you can eventually close it on something. And so in one sense, I think we all have, like, I'm closed-minded about a lot of things, but that doesn't mean, like, I have to function. And we all have to function on an epistemological level. We all have to function as though what we are believing at the moment is absolutely true. That's the way we live. Now, if someone were to come and show me that I'm wrong in some way, I'm perfectly willing.
True.
Yeah, that we have to live as though what we believe is reality. We just function that way. We would drive ourselves crazy if we did not function at some level where we just stop. It's like the 5-year-old. Why, Daddy? Why? Why, Daddy? Why? And then eventually the parent goes, because I said so. Right? And at some point we have to be the parent to ourselves and say, I draw the line here. I have to proceed this way. So I think it's important to acknowledge that there's nothing wrong. I mean, closed-minded is oftentimes used as a negative thing with negative connotations. Like, I'm not listening to you. But I think in practical reality, we do close the mind on things that we think are true for practical reasons. So there's nothing.
Hey, Pierce,
I'd like to say there's no. Okay, go
Pierce,
ahead.
can you define what you mean by an open mind before we?
Yeah, that would be good.
Sure. Yeah.
Pouncing on this.
Well, actually, I'll say what I think it is, but first I want to see if I understand you correctly, Daniel. So when I heard you say that, you kind of like close your mind, lock that door, right? You said, like, if someone showed you something that could demonstrate that something else is the case, that something else is true, the opposite or whatever, that you would, it sounds like you would change your mind, right?
Sure. I've changed my mind about a lot of
like even on those closed-minded, even on those closed-minded stuff. Yeah, I would consider you open-minded. That's open-minded to me.
Well, I'm saying, I'm not saying open-mindedness is bad. I'm not saying closed-mindedness is bad. There are some people that are so open-minded, their brains fall out. They don't believe anything. It's all a constant skepticism and doubt. And the Christian philosopher Leslie Newbegin said, if you're going to doubt something, you need a standard by which to doubt. There has to be one thing you don't doubt as you're doubting everything else, right?
Hot dogs or sandwiches. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Right. But open-mindedness is virtuous and closed-mindedness is virtuous, but they both depend on a standard of truth by which we examine everything else. I'm closed-minded because of this, and this. I'm open-minded because I don't know everything, right? It would be stupid to think that I've figured everything out. So in that sense, I'm totally open to learning things, astrophysics and more theology or whatever. But I'm closed-minded about some certain basic things, but I'm not unwilling to have discussions about those either. So I think it's a both and. Not, you can't just be open-minded or just be closed-minded. I think there's a healthy balance, and both can be virtuous, but they both require the idea of truth, I think.
Can you think of a different word that maybe would feel more comfortable for you that exhibits the traits that Pierce was talking about with the new information updating your view?
I think I have no problem with the terms. I'm just kind of clearing the air about why I don't think that open-mindedness is necessarily bad or closed-mindedness is necessarily bad. I think like I love astrophysicists. I love astrophysics, but I'm not an astrophysicist. So I have to be open-minded about learning from people who are.
Right, but you
that
initially
kind of
got
thing.
like an ick feeling, it sounds like, whenever you heard that question.
Yeah, well,
So
when people say,
is there something similar that he could ask that you think would
I see what you're
not
saying.
come across?
Yeah, I
that
just
way?
wanted to clarify. I was kind of defending her in a sense of expressing the idea that she's closed-minded for a good reason, right? I think that's what she was trying to say, even though she seemed a little conflicted about that. And maybe she has the lack of on the moment, thinking on the spur of the moment. She's kind of saying, in a sense, at least I saw it, that it's good to be closed-minded about this, though she's struggling to articulate it. And I was just kind of saying that I think it's okay to be closed-minded about things, and that doesn't mean you're not willing to learn. It just means that you function day to day with this basic proper truth that you think at the moment is nobody's going to change your mind about it. Like for me, it's Jesus, right? I'm not going to change my mind about that. But that doesn't mean I put my fingers in my ears when I talk to atheists either. So does that make sense?
I
could
so.
say I'm closed-minded about who I think Jesus is.
What it sounds
but
like you're
still,
saying. What it sounds like you're saying to me is that you think there's virtue in having definitive stances to say that this is what I think is true, and I'm not like wishy-washy on it. That's what it sounds like. What?
Yeah, you got it, David. That's right. Yeah. It's a virtue to have a stance and charge at it. Yeah. Throw it out there, fly your flag, and stand your ground, and be nice.
Interesting.
I'm still working on the. Go ahead.
You can still put your flagpole down, fly your flag, and I think you still can be open-minded. Maybe that's a hot take.
Absolutely, Pierce.
Yeah.
No, I that's what I'm saying. That you can be closed-minded about. This is my land. This is my flag. This is my territory. Like we have a flag in Texas. It says "Come and take it," with a cannon, right? Hey, we got it out there. Come and take it. We'll defend it. Maybe we'll learn something in the battle, but it's okay to I'm totally open-minded to. I would be stupid at my point at 55 years of age and only been a Christian for 30 years to think I've figured God out, right? I still have to be open-minded about what God may want me to do, and I still have to learn and grow. Christianity is not about memorizing 5 points and figuring it all out. So I'm closed-minded about certain basic principles about God, but I'm open-minded to continue to learn about that. So I think we are all on the same page here. I don't know, David.
I think we got there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the main premise of the talk with Jenna here was that she's said that she doesn't feel like she needs to be open-minded on this stance.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, you're saying that's a virtuous thing, having like a strong response to it.
Yes,
do you think this is a semantical thing? Do you think this is like
no.
She will never change her mind? It's more of like she's trying to show that she values this.
Yes, it's like that's how I was. A good way to put it, David. Yes, I think she's. I want to plant my flag. I don't have. I got to go back to the ammo shed to get the bullets because I don't have the. I can't shoot right now, but I know I should be. I know I should be defending this. I want to defend it. I know it's right to defend it. I'll die defending it. She has that.
Let's be real. We have like a lot of culture of gotcha culture. We got a lot of culture of like showing concession is a sign of weakness or a sign of of giving ammo to the other side, so to speak. If you show doubt or weakness in a lot of ways, and so that's in theory what I think SE can excel at the most is making a space for people to discuss doubt or discuss what would cause doubt, or discuss what would cause a change of confidence or a re-examining of their stance without feeling like they have to be wrong or like told they're wrong or called out or gotcha.
Yeah. Now that's a kind of SE I could get on board with. But there's still a kind of, the hangover for me is still like, I think a lot of atheists who practice it still are doing Old Testament SE, still, where it's still the gotcha in some sense, kinder, gentler gotcha, but still a gotcha. I'm not saying you guys, but
yeah.
I think, David, I like the safe space idea of exploring your ideas, and I think that's what Pierce has created for this lady. She wants to be defending her beliefs virtuously, and Pierce isn't shooting arrows at her, so she's processing it, but I think she's just at a loss at this point for how should I defend what just seemed to me to be a contradiction. I should I should be open-minded, but I'm closed about this. And I agree with her. You can be open and closed-minded for virtuous reasons, but she's just not having the vocabulary at the moment to be able to express that. And hats off to Pierce for not pouncing on her there, going, "Oh, how did you do that?" Because I might have done that. I'll be honest with you, I might have done that.
That's honest.
That's true. I would have, maybe. No, well, not with a woman.
There's times I probably would have too.
Yeah, be like, "Hey, if you made me mad,
similar
watch
things."
out." But somebody said in the comments here, I'm just looking at it on my phone. Who I don't know who certain conversations is. I don't know who's behind that, but
that's Robert.
Oh, it's Robert. Okay, hi Robert. He says Daniel has actually made a case to be closed-minded as the end state to an infinite regress of asking why. Yes, Robert. Excellent. That's a better way of putting it than I'm mumbling. Yeah, an infinite regress. This is like in cosmology, like how many, Stephen Hawking, how many turtles support the universe? It's turtles all the way down. An infinite regress of causes and causes and causes and causes and causes for the universe. And at some point, I don't think the human mind is capacious enough to deal with infinite regresses. Some philosophers who are really smart can go, "Oh, I don't care about those." But for the human brain, we can't just we have to have a stopping point. That's just the way we seem to be wired. Whether it's true or not is another facet to it. But I think we all want a stopping point, right? In terms of our cognition, we want to find a place where our brain rests and says, "Yeah, this is the foundation on which I stand." And I think that's what you've built down to here, Pierce. She has a foundation she's probably not looked at for a while. So, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay, so why should you be closed-minded?
Not like I will hear other people's opinions, but I know I will not change my mind for the fact that if it ever happens to me or anyone that I know, like. And it's like, I believe that it's the person who is pregnant's right to choose.
I don't know where to go from here. Do you have any questions that you think I should ask?
Not specifically. No. Yeah, I don't want to.
Okay. I think I'll end with one thing that I like to do sometimes. So imagine that there's an alien. His name's Alan.
Okay.
Nice guy. That guy. And he lands a spaceship over there in the ground. He's never been to Earth before. Doesn't really have any beliefs. He comes from a totally different world, and he comes up. He's like, "What are you guys talking about?" And we're like, "Abortion, and whether it should be legalized, Alan." And then he's like, "Oh, okay, cool." Walks off. And Alan is thinking, and he's like, "I want to know if abortion should be illegal everywhere or legal everywhere." What is the best way for Alan to figure that out?
Researching.
Researching?
Yeah, researching like the positive and negative effects of it, the positive and negative effects of the foster care system, stuff like that.
Okay. So take in some evidence of that. Okay. And is that the method that you have used?
Yes.
Perfect. And do you think that it's possible for him to come to a different conclusion than you have if he takes in that evidence?
Yes.
It is possible for him to come. So he could think that abortion should be illegal everywhere?
Yes.
Okay. I guess why, if we take in all that evidence and we're coming to different conclusions, I guess, does that mean the evidence, what does that say about the evidence? Is it reliable?
I mean, it could be also like a bias because obviously they don't really care, not necessarily care, but like it doesn't affect them. So they could have a different opinion about it.
Okay. When it comes to abortion, is it just, and being legalized, is it just an opinion?
What do you mean?
Is this abortion should be legalized everywhere? Is that like a fact, or is it an opinion? Is it a?
It's an opinion.
It's an opinion. Gotcha. So somebody else can come to a different opinion.
Yes.
On that matter. Okay. So Alan could come to a different. Okay. Is there opinions that are more correct than others?
I would say no, because they're all opinions. They're not like factual.
Okay. Yeah, I think I almost should leave it there. I'm tempted to talk more about the opinions. Should we be always, stand 100% firm, unwilling to change our opinions?
No.
But in this case, for you,
yes,
you should.
I should.
I think we'll leave it there. I'll let you have the talking stick metaphorically. If there's any questions you have for me,
do you guys go to like college?
All right. So a question I would have really liked to have heard there at the end would have been, can you imagine somebody who might be affected by it but has a different opinion, and why do you think they'd have a different view? Because it seemed to be that almost seemed like one of her big motivating factors is that it could happen to her, it could happen to her friends. It's something that is a real possibility in her life that she feels though she should have an option for. And we got close with the talking about other people having different opinions, about the research leading to different opinions, but it was all people who were, when you asked why would somebody come to a different opinion, she said because they weren't affected by it. And they don't care. This doesn't affect the alien. He wouldn't care. So from that point, boom. What about somebody who it affects and they come to a different conclusion? What method could we use to understand it the way you do? Or how could we end up at your conclusion and not theirs if we're trying to figure that out?
Yeah, it's almost like the underlying assumption is everybody who's affected will believe the same as I do.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
I
didn't notice that.
You got a thought there?
There's
Dan?
I coughed. I had a thought, but I coughed.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were doing the thing.
Were you guys alive when Ronald Reagan was president? Are you old enough? You were young, youthful, no? 80s. When were you all born?
Right at the
You
top.
born after 19? Okay, so Ronald Reagan, you guys know who Ronald Reagan was.
Yeah.
He had a quote about abortion, and it's I'm going to paraphrase it here. He said, "I've noticed that everybody who is for abortion has been born." That might be an interesting. I might have asked her, "Are you glad that your mother was pro-life in some sense, or at least made the choice to have her?" And a really quick personal story, gentlemen. I would not be here if my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, my real grandmother, who I never met, she was this was the 1930s in rural Ohio. She had an affair with a riverboat captain who went up and down the Ohio River shuffling coal. He had a beautiful voice, sang like Frank Sinatra, apparently, from what we understand. Alcoholic, but he and my grandmother had an affair that produced my father. And she hid the pregnancy for as long as she could. Now, in the 30s, I think abortion was illegal, but you could still get one if you wanted. But she decided to have my father and put him up for adoption. And my dad's adopted family was not ideal. He was an only child, but had, the shame. When my dad passed away, we got a hold of the real parents, and she didn't want to know, really. She was up. She just, I mean, as you can imagine, a child you gave up for adoption 50 years ago has passed away. It was kind of a big thing for her. But anyway, I think about that sometimes. I'm like, gosh, if two people were moral, I actually wouldn't be here. But that's so and then before I was a Christian, this is another story related to it. I had a friend, and it wasn't my responsibility. She had a boyfriend. It wasn't even a boyfriend, and she got pregnant through him. And I was her friend at the time. I was in my early 20s, and she was gonna get an abortion. I'm just gonna do it. And I said, well, I'll support you in whatever you do. I didn't take her to the clinic or anything. I was just like, well, I'll be there for you, kind of thing. And she had the abortion, and she was traumatized by the event. She had a dream not long after she had the abortion. The child appeared to her and said, "Why didn't you want to be my mommy?" And that just rocked Jessica's world. Her name was Jessica. And it scared me too. I mean, I wasn't a Christian. And I thought, dang it. You can't take that one back. And so that has always, I was pro-life before I was a Christian because of that situation. Scared me, So I agree, David. I think that the emotional, spiritual, there is a moral and a spiritual component to it. But your experience will definitely determine to some extent where you stand on this question. For sure. And I think it's important and I think you did a good job, Pierce, of trying to negotiate that without being offensive. That wasn't easy. I'm not going to go out to a public place and talk to some woman about abortion. Are you kidding me? That's not me. Hats off to you, sir, for doing that. And maybe I should. I don't know. But that was a good way to handle it. Because I think if you had kept the conversation going. Okay, so I know where I was going with this. You guys need to change this. You need to petition your street epistemology friends to change this. You always drop the whole, "Do you have any questions for me?" kind of in the feels that we're ending the interview now. So it's kind of put out there like what I'll say to my guests on the podcast. Okay, Doug, final thoughts. And so without saying final thoughts, you're saying, okay, you got 60 seconds. Ask me any questions. Nathan did that to me. Not Nate, but Nathan. He's like, we've been talking for 6 hours. Do you have any questions of me? Like, Nathan,
I think
it's 10 o'clock at night. Did you, David? I don't know. I don't remember. Okay, maybe you did. But I think this is what I'd like. You get more views from me if you just reveal your point of view and have it. It doesn't have to turn into a debate if you reveal your point of view. Because to me, now this is just me, if I walked up to a table on a college campus and we're talking about a hot topic, and you don't reveal anything about what you think about this, that's going to make me go, what's this dude all about? Where are you? Why are you asking me? Why are you asking me these questions? I really want to know. What's the cameras? Why are you asking me that? Why haven't you told me what you believe? What's going on here? What do you really believe, Watkins? That's the stuff I'd like to hear, and I'd like to see it where you're like, if she asked you in the middle of the conversation, what do you think? Don't go, well, this is all about you. Just throw it out there. I think that would make, you probably would, but I think a lot of people think that if you revealed your position, that would make it debatey. I don't think so. I mean, you all know where I stand. Yeah, I mean, it's some people. No, I'm not saying you maybe.
I think
but some
revealing
people
at
think
the beginning might make people
well
try to
a natural place
debate in that way. Yeah,
it could be, but if you've given her, you've kind of put her under the spotlight for what, 15 minutes or so. Would you let her do that to you?
Yeah.
About abortion. Okay.
Sure.
And I think so. Here's my suggestion. So instead of saying, do you have any questions for me? You might say, kind of being a little bit more rapport building here, you might say, I've put you under the spotlight for the last 15 minutes. Do you want to grill me on this question? Be happy to answer any questions. If you want to ask me about abortion, I'll tell you what I think. Are you interested in what I think? Elicit that, and to see if your interlocutor, because I'll tell you, in allowing them to say, hey, look, why don't you question me on abortion if you don't mind? You're going to learn more about them by the kinds of questions they're asking you than if you're just asking them questions. Because as they ask you questions, you're going to learn more about where they're coming from. And you might even find more common ground that way. But I'd like to see more of a creative bridge where you invite the interlocutor to grill you, or grill, wrong word, but to ask you questions.
I've considered
that would be entertaining. I mean, that would be fun to watch. I would like to see more SEers put their beliefs on the line and have the interlocutor run them through the gauntlet.
The thing that's kind of, I've considered that and I've thought about it. The one thing that's kind of held me back a little bit is I feared that they would think I was having some sort of agenda and then like wanting to, desiring to say my point, my point of view.
But you can do that
agenda if you don't say anything, but they will know. They'll know, but they'll like attribute for sure that to say, like, well, this guy just disagreed with me and he's trying to convince me otherwise, as opposed to, well, I mean, I'm biased again, but I love my shtick because I'm just a dummy who doesn't know anything, and I don't have to make any kind of posits on anything. I just how can we all learn it?
Yeah, and I think every human being knows that the idea of epistemic neutrality, I wouldn't call it a facade. I would just say that everybody knows that there's no such thing as epistemic neutrality. Yeah. I mean, in the idea of creating a safe space with epistemic neutrality, yeah, it was like our book club, our Atheist and Christian book club. We all know where we stand, right? I know where
it's kind of how you
stand.
preface it and platform it. Because if you come out the gate with like a sign that says like, I disagree with this, prove me wrong, that's setting the stage for it being I'm trying to.
Yeah, I'm not saying right. Yeah, you want to.
But
you want to do
SE
this.
is setting up a board that says like, we're trying to talk about the ideas neutrally. We're trying to talk about it neutrally. And then if it comes around to like, well, do you have an opinion on this, or I can share my opinion on this if it.
I think civilly rather than neutral. I think civil rather than neutral would be a better. I don't know. I'm just spouting off the top of my head, but I think. I mean, everybody knows everybody has a position on these hot topics. So I think the idea of discussing things with civility might be a better way rather than claiming that you're talking about something neutral. Because every question that Pierce asked, I mean, I'm sitting, and the lady was nice. She was very nice. But I'm sitting there going, what's she going to say? Like her Starbucks is sitting there. Did you see her body language? Did you see her leg moving the whole time?
Yeah.
She was probably a little nervous, but I was a little nervous going, like, if I was sitting in Pierce's seat, I'd be like, what question? Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to say. I'd be nervous a little bit because I would be afraid that she might, So I think civility rather than epistemic neutrality, I think that would be my flavor, but to each his own in that regard, But I know what you mean, David. I know you're trying to establish a way in which everybody can share their opinions without being castigated.
Yeah, it's so hard getting over loaded words. Like whenever I try to talk to people about like religion or gender or something like that, I might say a word and it means this to me, but it groups me in with other people who say this or that. And like I have to sit there and really think about the fact that if I say this word, even though I'm trying to say this, they're hearing this, and it's tough. And so it sounds like neutrality is one of those words for you. Like it's like neutrality is a word that people use for deception.
I wouldn't call it deception. I wouldn't call it deception. I think it would be more like, I understand the sentiment of wanting to find common ground, but I also think if you're engaged at all in these hot topics, that there's not a human being on the planet who is actually neutral about something necessarily. Everybody, like even people that say I lack a belief in God, will go on and on about the God of the Old Testament, right? So do they really lack a belief? I think at some point when you get into the nitty gritty of these things, the neutrality kind of dissolves and people, eventually will say what they do. So I think, like, to me, I'd come into a conversation like that to be like, okay, this guy isn't neutral on this issue. I really want to know. That's just my curious mind. I would really want to know what Pierce thought about this and why is he doing this and why the cameras and why the questions and I would really be asking those kinds of questions if I was the IL. And I don't believe in epistemic neutrality. I don't think it's a real thing. So for me, I know you have a position. Let's talk about it with civility, I guess. So I'm not thinking that people are actually trying to deceive. I guess, David, I just don't think it's a real thing in a sense, a real position to take. But you can say I have a position and still empathetically listen to somebody. That's what I think Pierce was doing. Obviously, you have a position, but you were doing empathetic listening without being provocative. So, yeah, that's all I mean. I don't think you all are being deceptive with that. I just think, for me, epistemic neutrality in the realm of ideas it's not real. That's all.
Well,
does that make any sense?
We make the rules up on the spot. I mean, we're trying to agree to a game. I mean, the game is not real in itself, but we're agreeing to try to follow these rules of acting as a neutral, and we'll probably mess up. We'll travel, instead of traveling every time. Sure. But I think if you're trying to at least attempt it, I think it's attemptable. I think it's one of those. It's like an ideal, a lofty goal, and it's better to try it than to not.
Yeah, like I read the scholars I interview. I'll read their books, and some of the historians will say in the preface or something, I'm not epistemic. I'm not neutral on this topic. But what they do say is they say, well, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I believe. They put their cards on the table.
Well, that's that's for positing a claim, though. That is for making a claim. To review with another person, to have an activity of discussing how we get from point A to point B in beliefs. That is a framing. It's a different than trying to say that, okay, I'm not actually trying to convince you of anything. I'm secretly trying to convince you. It's the goal is to attempt to shed that natural human thing by doing unnatural conversations.
Do you think, David, that in general, that street epistemology is authentically epistemically neutral as a methodology?
If by authentically you mean 100% of the time, definitely not. If by
no, I'm just saying in. Oh, go ahead. I'm on a delay here. I'm sorry.
No problem. But in the way that a speed limit kind of helps structure the driving experience for everybody, although sometimes people go under or go over, it's still good that the limit is there. and it's still good that the structure is there, the agreement between the people, the agreement in your method, because it's going to have a higher percentage of neutrality than just doing a regular conversation or a debate.
What do you
How about the framing?
gentlemen think of when you think of this idea of epistemic neutrality from your position? Are you actually neutral on a topic, like I don't have an opinion on abortion, or does neutrality mean I'm just not going to tell you what I think?
Could mean either or. I guess it depends on context.
But for setting up an SE conversation, when you say, okay, we're going to be epistemically neutral here, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have no opinion about what you're talking about, right?
Correct.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So it means more of, I'm just not going to tell you what that is for now.
We're just not talking about my opinion at this stage. We're trying to talk
so
about your opinion.
So that is what you mean by, at least you two mean by neutrality here, is I'm just not going to share my opinion with you. It's not that I don't have one.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
because
And
I'm
it's
sitting
not
here
withholding
thinking that
it. Like, it's not like I won't tell you nana boo boo. It's more or less just shaping the conversation to say, let's
we've
play
had
a game. Let's set up the goal of understanding how you got from point A to point B in your beliefs. And it's a framing device.
I've been mildly entertained by your vocabulary tonight, gentlemen. Pierce with the silly goose and David with the nana boo boo. I'm outclassed here, guys. I can't. What can I say? That's great stuff right there. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that I understand. Like, to me, I wouldn't say I'm epistemically neutral. I would say I certainly have an opinion about this, but I really want to hear what yours is. And if when we're done, you can ask me what mine is. That's what I think. But I'm thank you for your clarity on that. I get it. Yeah. Do you want to know what I think, or that would be another hour and a half?
Probably.
I don't.
Well,
if you want to know, I can keep it very short, but I won't offer it if you don't want to talk about it.
Hold that thought for 2 seconds. What I would like to know personally is how we can talk about this kind of conversation. Like, how do you think that the SE here done was a net positive for having her consider her beliefs? Do you think that can you imagine a situation at which we could have that same kind of conversation with someone on the other side, and like answer those questions and I'll figure out where my brain went.
My problem, David, is my bias for as long as I've been watching SE. Since I read Boghossian's book in 2013 and I started watching Anthony's videos 10 years ago, I followed this from the get-go. I never did it really, but as Pierce knows, I'm inherently hyper suspicious of the ideological motivations of why people do this. And I'm having to learn, and I've seen over the years how it evolves, and you're talking about different subjects. And so I'm at the point where I'm taking this more on a case-by-case basis, like with you or with Pierce or any other people that have joined this movement late in the game here, SE Part 2, SE 2.0, whatever you want to call it, that it still remains largely a non-believing community in terms of a foundational ideology. Most of you are not Christians or not religious or atheists or agnostics or igtheists or non-theists. So I have to overcome the bias that at the root that you all are trying to make the world a safer place for secularism, right? So what I've had to adopt over the last couple of years is just try to get to know people like this in order to hear them out and to hear how they're doing it. Now, I will say, I think you and Pierce, as far as I can tell, this is a genuinely good way of talking about things with people, and don't suspect necessarily. I mean, Pierce knows. I think it's hard for me to abandon the lingering idea that atheism was behind all this. So I do try to empathetically listen to what you guys want to be doing about it. And I like this. I think it was a dashing good conversation, at least in the just on the facet of just pure bravery, right? I mean, that's a good thing. It took a lot of guts to even have that kind of conversation where he did. And you didn't seem to force anything agenda-wise into her worldview. I mean, maybe you agree with her. I don't know. But I think, and so one of the evidences for my bias in maintaining my bias is because you see very few street epistemology videos where it's atheists SEing atheism. There's a handful of them out there maybe, and they're just real quick and easy. And so it's like, it seems like to me, and I've said this before, atheism gets a free pass. It doesn't seem to be one of the topics that are often discussed in these conversations. I've never seen, I mean, maybe you have one in your repertoire, but I think I've seen all the SE videos that have atheist on atheist. Maybe there's 5 of them that I could name. But not seeing that, I mean, there's all kinds of other topics, but that one never really is featured. So I think, David, to be short-winded here, I like what you're doing. Now, whether or not you're using this to make atheists, I don't think so. But
really.
You have to understand, it's lingering for me, right? It's a bias I have to overcome and listen to people and see where they're coming from. And so I think this, on the surface, I would say this was a good conversation, Pierce. And I think you were genuine about it, and doesn't sound like you had an agenda toward it, but maybe the voice in the back of my head, the devil angel on my shoulders going, Pierce agrees with her. So, I'm not saying I don't know what you believe, but it must be hard to do SE on topics with someone with whom you agree, even though you don't tell them. Would you find that to be true if you find to find ways to get them to think like atheism on atheism or whatever? Have you run into that, Pierce? Have you run into a topic that you wanted to not change somebody's mind, but ask them critical questions about something you agree with?
Yeah, when I talked to, I forgot his name, about global warming, I agreed with him about that. And it was a little bit difficult. I mean, I think I still got there. I think I still asked all the right questions, but it was kind of like, I don't know, it was a little bit more difficult to reach for more questions that had a lot of substance. But overall, I think I did a good job.
Pierce, were you in this video, the interview? I mean, you didn't, obviously, when you were doing it, you didn't know you'd be talking to me, but were you trying, when you were talking to her, were you trying, I mean, obviously, I think you were trying to hide your position, trying to keep that? Did you not want to reveal it at any point, or?
I didn't really care either way. I mean, if she would have asked me, I would have told her what I thought. But without her asking, I didn't plan to reveal it, if that makes any sense.
It seemed, my guess would be, from what I watched, that you might agree with her mostly.
Probably, I would mostly disagree, actually.
Okay, well, you got me there. It seemed like to me, it was like maybe you went easy on her, but then I thought, well, maybe you're going easy on her because it's a hard conversation to have. But I thought maybe you would agree. But there are certain things. So I think you hid your position well there. In that sense, you fooled me, I guess. I couldn't figure it out anyway. Aha, there it is. So, I mean, yeah.
Can you imagine yourself having a conversation like that? I mean, because that was with somebody who I think you disagree with, obviously. Can you imagine using this as a discussion to get to a point where you can talk about things that are of substance? Like here's what I think you get this, but I'm just going to say it just in case. Like, you can talk to like some like like imagine you're talking to a Muslim, and you ask them why they believe, and they start going on about the ontological arguments, like every painting has a painter, yada yada, and like you could spend hours talking about why that's the first step beyond that is Yahweh instead of Allah or whatever. You've got hours of things to talk about in that way. But then once you get done with that conversation, really it comes down to a feeling of things lining up in their life that they interpreted to be Allah. And that's what they wanted. That's what really drives the thing. And so you can imagine you could skip hours and hours and hours of debate to have a discussion about what people actually care about. That's what it can be done.
Well, having the years of experience with the Atheist and Christian Book Club, which is not SE, I've been doing that for 6 or 7 years now. I forgot how long we've been doing it, but I'm at a relationship point with our atheist friends where my friend Ken can look across the table at me and goes, Daniel, what would cause you to doubt? And, we can have that conversation, and I know Ken's not playing gotcha with me, or Bill can make fun of me, and we've had years and years of rapport with many of our longstanding members. But I think the one thing that I like, David, that maybe I don't like about SE necessarily, and it's just a personal bias, is the attempt to, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm just saying I don't like it because I've approached this differently. I'm much more of an open person, and I want to know where you are, so I know how to address the questions that you're asking. I want to know background. I want to know what your positions are, not so that I can argue or debate, because I think, some people have an aversion to what you would call a debate necessarily. I've heard this talk before, but I don't mind that. I'm not going to try to play gotcha when I get into a debate, but I much rather know.
Debate has
like
its
I go to
place.
Utah twice a year and I talk to Mormons. Yeah, and I talk to Mormons and I tell them up front, I don't hide it because I said, look, I'm not a Mormon. I genuinely want to have a conversation about why you believe what you believe. But I have to tell them up front where I'm coming from. I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm here sharing the gospel with people. What's your ideas about the gospel? And, would it be better? Would I have more traction if I didn't say that? I don't know.
Maybe.
I guess that's my method. My preferred method is to be honest with people. I'm not saying you're being dishonest. I'm saying that in a conversation.
Well, Daniel reconnects here.
Yeah.
I sparked an idea. What if we had like a little triangle type thing where on one side towards the conversational partner, it will say, would you like to know what I believe about this topic? ? On your side, it's blank, dry erase marker, and you can write what you have on it. And at any point, if they point to the sign or say, yeah, I'd like to know what you believe, flip it on around. And it like opens up that question. And if they want to know that, it's there. It's out in the open, like boom, in your face. But they don't have to ask it, obviously. You know what I mean? Would that be beneficial?
It sounds neat. I like the idea of the involvement there, but at the same time, it feels like it's going to
does it sound
distract from their beliefs,
yeah,
more or less. It's leading you towards the thing that we were talking about. It's like they're like you go up to a staunch Republican or a staunch Democrat, and you say that you're from the opposing side. You say I'm a Democrat to a Republican. You say I'm a Republican to a Democrat. Automatically, they start getting a little bit of a wallop. The trust kind of drops down. The assumptions of where your questions are leading start to come up, and it's everybody's going to assume you have a bias anyway. But if you can try to structure the conversation as much about their beliefs, it's less likely for them to be trying to anticipate what would a Democrat say this, what would a Republican say to this, or is this guy just trying to convince me one way or the other.
David, did I answer your question before I got cut off?
Mostly.
Is
But
there
then I got
something
lost
left out? I
in the
didn't.
sauce on other things.
Okay. Was there something I didn't finish? Do you want me to finish up here? Did I?
Pierce, do you have a pin in the where he was at? My brain can't pull it up.
Okay.
I kind
Do
of
you
lost
guys
track
want
as we talked.
Okay. Do you guys want to? I think maybe people that are watching would be fun if I got double SE'd by both of you about this topic. I could do it in 10 minutes. That's about all I got left. But if you want to do a quick SE, I mean, maybe if you wanted to, I don't know if you're out of steam or not, but it's okay. I'm not here to push anything.
Before any of that is answered, I also want to volunteer to be a guinea pig for anybody to ask me about anything. I don't know many things in life, but I'm willing to.
Let's talk about.
If you want to SE me sometime, you want to practice it, I can be your first interlocutor.
Aha. Well, let's talk about. Here's one thing I want to talk about, guys. I want to hear your position on this. So you hear a lot of people talking about the separation of belief and the epistemological foundations of the belief. How do you separate, gentlemen, belief from epistemology? Not a trick question. I don't have a score sheet here. I'm literally wanting to know what you think about that. If I'm not clear, I can restate it. Like, how do we separate? Like people sometimes will say, I've seen this in SE review videos, where say, like, I believe in Jesus. Somebody says, well, why do you believe in Jesus? And I give these reasons. And many SEers will say, well, those aren't reasons. Those are just other beliefs or just your opinions or whatever. You're not really talking about the real reason, Daniel. You're dodging or whatever. You're not giving us the epistemological foundation of why you believe in Jesus. I try, and I don't seem to satisfy the requirement of an SE conversation by giving people you guys know who William is in the Inspire.
Yep.
I don't know, the octopus. He's a good guy, nice guy. He's often talked about the idea of really getting to why people really believe, really getting to that foundation of why people really believe in talking to Christians. And I've seen a lot of Christian videos with SEers, and people will criticize the Christian for not expressing why they believe what they believe. And so I'm curious as to what you guys think about how, or if, that belief can actually be separated from what you all consider to be an epistemological processes. So let's take my example. I believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Okay, I could give supporting reasons for that. But gentlemen, what would be for you a satisfactory epistemological explanation that would satisfy the criteria within the street epistemology rubric? What kinds of reasons would be epistemological reasons that a Christian could give to support that belief? I guess that's as specific as I can be. If I'm confusing, I can clarify more. But what do you think about that, gentlemen?
The only answer that would be the correct answer is the honest answer. And really, I have no idea of what that is necessarily. Like, obviously, you can't get inside your mind, see it if you're telling the truth or if you're just giving kind of an answer that you think will satisfy the question. Sometimes people do that. I do that. I've caught myself doing that. I shouldn't do that, but I do that. So the only answer is the honest answer. And sometimes that's really hard to sometimes it's really easy to get. Sometimes you ask a person and that's the answer. Sometimes I don't know if that's the answer. That's really the honest answer, but yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
What do you think, David? Yeah, I understand. What do you think, David?
If I was having a conversation with you about that and you told me that, I would ask for your reasonings and you would tell me them. And that if it's say like, well, there's a lot of historical evidence. And then I would ask things like, if you didn't know about the historical evidence, did you know about the historical evidence before you believed this? If you didn't have that, would you still believe? And then if that's not necessary, I would move on to the next one. Those would be just complementary things that are built upon the other beliefs. And then I'd work the way down the line to there to try to find things that are unreducible, so to speak.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say, Pierce says you're not, the epistemological reasons behind why somebody believes, Pierce, you seem to be saying it varies with the individual. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And David,
And
you seem to be, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and sometimes when people are put on the spot and asked, sometimes they'll give kind of a generic social reason, I guess.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah,
right.
and I've caught myself doing that. It's a
sure.
natural thing to do. And sometimes there is this
Sure.
other reason. And sometimes they don't even know what that reason is until, they
Mhm.
really dig into it.
But would you consider, like, let's say, a lot of Christians give personal experience, right? I've said that
Mhm.
in some of my interviews with people. Obviously, becoming a Christian is a personal experience. Would either of you consider that to be an epistemic reason? You may not,
Sure.
whether you agree with it or not,
It could be.
whether you think that's a good reason or not. Do you think that is an epistemological reason for one's belief?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Glad to see you, because I agree. I agree with you, gentlemen. I think
Yeah.
you cannot escape personal experience. You can't get out of your skin and look at yourself in the mirror having a personal experience, except when you're shaving. At least, I guess that's you having a personal experience watching yourself, I suppose, or doing review videos. That's like having an out-of-body personal experience, I suppose. But whether you agree that it's a good reason or not, you would say that's epistemological. Okay, so here's another along these same lines. I know you guys have applied and used the outsider test for faith in your line of questioning. And I think the premise is good. I think what did I miss a joke?
I said not me.
Oh, you don't use it. Okay, good. High fist bump, David. I hate good. Because a funny story, John
Just
Loftus
kidding.
wrote the book. No,
Awesome.
that's all right. John Loftus, you guys know who John Loftus is?
I forget.
He's the guy who wrote the book on the outsider test for faith. 2013 came out the same year as a Manual for Creating Atheists. John was on our Atheist and Christian book club a couple years ago. And we asked John if he applied his outsider test to himself. And we said, John, have you ever read Bart Ehrman's Did Jesus Exist? Now, Bart Ehrman is an atheist, and he wrote a book claiming that the historical Jesus exists. And John is an atheist who doesn't think the Jesus of the Bible existed. John won't read Bart Ehrman's book. And we're all like, John, you wrote the book on questioning and challenging your own beliefs, and you won't even apply them to yourself. You won't read Bart Ehrman's book. And he's like, I don't want to read it. Anyway, short story about that. But in all seriousness, let me put it this way in a scenario. So people use logic and reason and critical thinking when they come to conclusions about reality. Would you agree? We all kind of accept the idea. I'm not a trick question, but logic, reason, and critical thinking, right? Are kind of
and shortcuts.
Sure.
And heuristics and
heuristics and all kinds of things. But a lot of times in these discussions, we can bring up logic and reason, the laws of logic and reason and critical thinking. Now, here's where the outsider test is problematic, I think, for street epistemology, and I'd like to see somebody innovatively address this. In that, when a Christian is being questioned about faith, like that's the trigger word for you street epistemology people is faith. It used to be. I don't know how much it is for people anymore, but faith. The question is, if someone else can use faith to come to a different conclusion, is faith a reliable method to understand what is true about something? A valid question, but the problem with it, I think, is that we can use logic and reason and critical thinking in the very same way. If people use logic and reason or critical thinking or any other metacognitive epistemological tools and come to different conclusions about reality, like philosophers do it all the time, and scientists and cosmologists use logic and reason and critical thinking to come to different conclusions about reality, does that make logic, reason, and critical thinking suspect.
You froze.
I think he's gonna completely disconnect again.
Solid freeze frame.
Yeah. I want to answer, but
Yeah, I want to.
I
I
want
don't
him
know
to
if you can
actually
hear.
hear.
so,
Yeah. I want him to hear what I'm gonna say.
I think that's the tail end of the video there. You guys just wrap it up on that, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, while we wait for him to come back.
Campuses, is that like your main place?
For me, I really like college
It's really
campuses
hard to
because
follow karaoke.
students are so willing to
Sorry, what did you say?
It's really hard to follow along with this karaoke. I can't get the cadence right.
Oh.
talk about what they believe is true, and it's more of like an exercise of critical thinking. So I think it's a great place. Veronica's gone to many different places, parks, Lambeau Field.
Oh, that's fun.
So a bunch of other places.
She eased up.
But,
you could tell that.
yeah, I
she started feeling
particularly
uncomfortable
do
at
like
the end,
college
like where you
campuses.
didn't press her.
Oh, that's nice.
I think she.
Anything else you got for me?
I
Where do
can't
you guys
speak
like
for
put
her, but I
it?
imagine she
Like,
valued
is it
you not
like YouTube?
zinging her.
Assuming all the equipment didn't fail, that's where you can find it.
All right.
You can have a keychain too.
Oh, thank you. That's cute. I will put that on my keys.
If I give you a children's book, do you have any children that you in your life that you'd be able to give it to?
Yes.
Get you one.
Hey, nice plug.
I'm going right here.
Yeah.
We'll give away all these. Here is one of each.
Yep,
Thank you.
written by me.
Oh,
Feel free
cute.
to read them,
I'm
keep them,
back.
or give them to that child.
Welcome back.
All right, if you don't got anything for me, I
Sorry.
think that's all I got.
Right.
It's all right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for stopping by and
It's
having
the
the chat.
internet.
Okay, we finished up the video while you were gone.
Yeah, it wasn't too much.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I'm
there wasn't
sorry
really
for
anything
the
there.
excursion.
happens.
Anyway,
It's okay.
was my question weird? Did it make
No,
sense?
no.
I was,
Wait, I'd like to answer it. Pierce, you want a first crack at it, or?
Sure. Yeah. Let me try to remember what it was now.
All right, then I got
so
it.
it
I'm locked
was-
and loaded.
Go ahead.
I think that to say that if people disagree on logic, reason, and cognitive processes, that is a little different than faith in one way, mainly that you can trace the path of the logical progresses. If somebody is coming to this conclusion, they have to show their work. But whereas faith is saying that this is something we can't see, but we just have to trust it. And if someone just says like, "Look, we don't know, and you just got to trust us," I mean, that's a different story. I would be critical of those people, or I wouldn't have the same amount of confidence what they say either.
so faith, you're saying, David, in your understanding here, you're comparing faith as something unseen and logic as something seen.
Logic is something that can be drawn out in steps, whereas like faith can be used for things that you can't draw out the steps. You have to literally skip steps in a lot of things in faith. It's to say that
Okay,
we
so
don't
like-
have this step here, but we get to the one after it, and you just got to trust me that this is the one in between.
So I guess, so the biblical example of faith would be more like trust. The word is pistis, but so let's say you're at a stoplight and the light turns green. Now, we all know what you can do at a green light. But can I, as I'm going through the green light, I don't have the space to show my steps to why I can do this. You see what I'm saying? That I'm trusting the people on both sides of the intersection aren't going to come driving through, but I can't see that trust.
Okay.
Though I
think
have to-
An
I have
important thing that we should determine then. So what is the difference between faith and trust in what you're describing, so I can better answer?
So biblical faith, as I understand it, would be a trust based on work that has been shown. Here's the work that has been shown. This is sufficient for me to trust it, in a sense. And that work being the reasons why I would believe Scripture, the historicity of Scripture, the cosmological, moral arguments, various arguments for Christianity, showing the work of what other people in the past have considered to be evidence. leading me to the conclusion of, do I trust this? Do I put my life into it? Much in the same way as I know what the laws are. I don't know who those people are on the other side of the intersection, but I'm going, based on what I know, I'm going to exercise trust in driving through the intersection. That's not a perfect analogy, but you have enough sufficient evidence at your disposal to proceed through an intersection on a green light. You can't prove it. You don't have it in your glove box. You don't have the traffic regulations in your glove box and whatnot. But if you got pulled over by a police officer and he said you ran a red, I mean, you can't prove it, but you know the law well enough to know that you can proceed through the intersection on a green light, though it's not at your disposal to prove it. So I can't finally show you the face of God, but I can show you the steps that have been given. And then the trust is like an active, it's like an active belief. Jumping out of an airplane. You don't know who packed the chute. You jump out of the airplane. You can't prove the chute was packed properly, but you trust the individual who did it. If you didn't, you'd never step out of the plane. And I think you have enough reason to.
Another freeze.
And Daniel and I have talked past each other so often on the word faith that I think I finally understand what he means. And I understand the mistake that I was making. When he uses the word faith, he doesn't mean it how many other people mean it. Some other people mean it just like, absence of evidence, right?
Yeah.
I have faith. I believe it, even though there's no evidence for it. That's one way some people use that word. Daniel doesn't use it in that way. He almost, from what I'm understanding, and I'm trying to steel man him here, he almost uses faith as another word, or how I would use the word evidence. So you can see how we would have talked past each other
Sure.
for almost ever, because I just don't define it that way. I would just use the word evidence.
Yeah.
And if he wants to use it that way, that's fine.
Sure.
That's okay. I don't mind. It's perfectly fine. But yeah, it can be kind of confusing.
Yeah, I get that. And that's the fun thing about definitions. That's why it's always important to do definitions first.
Okay, I'm back.
While you were disconnected,
y'all are talking about me.
Yeah, we were. I was saying how we've talked past each other like for forever on the word faith. Like I had this like preconception of how you were using the word, and that didn't align with how you were actually using it. So that resulted in a lot of misunderstandings. And from my understanding, you kind of use the word faith like I would use the word evidence, I think.
Oh no, frozen again.
He's frozen. This isn't going well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to call it a wrap here.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. But I hear that, and I'd be curious to hear a definition, like an example of faith that he's talking about, used in a religious sense, like used specifically with something with Christianity, just to see if it's different than what he's using with the stoplight.
Yeah, there might be a little different. Like, I want to say claim wise, but at the stoplight thing is, that's kind of confusing me actually. Now that you say that, those seem like, unless he was saying, I don't know. I'm confused.
I understand, and it sounds like he put a comment in there, so I think he's rebooting his stuff up there still. So I'll just say, interesting interview. Did great. I think you had like a lot of good like questions that had her examine like the kind of standard she has on herself versus others, and I think that's a big part of why we do any of this. Is just so we can hit those points of questioning why do I think this and why do I think other people's don't, kind of thing.
Pierce, I heard you say something about the similarity of what you consider to be my definition of faith, and then I disappeared.
Oh, yeah. I was comparing it to my definition of evidence, and I thought they were very similar.
What's your definition of evidence?
Oh, what is it? Something, a piece of what's the right word? I'm going to define evidence with evidence. I almost did that. A piece of what's it called when you can like see something and measure it and stuff. What's that?
Demonstrable?
Word?
Something demonstrable?
No.
Empirical?
Empirical.
Yeah.
Something empirical that you can demonstrate. This is a work in progress. Something that leads you to a conclusion based on empirical data. I think I'm going to go with that.
Okay. So for you, evidence has to be, in order for something to be evidence, it has to be empirical. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
So,
I don't know if you believe that or not.
No, I would say the best types of evidence are that. But I think almost anything can be evidence.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be empirical.
Not necessarily.
Empirical evidence gives you more confidence that a claim is true.
Because empirical evidence is most likely repeatable in theory.
Okay.
I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how can we, you're not claiming that empirical evidence is a better kind of evidence, or are you making that claim? Like empirical evidence is superior.
I guess it depends. I would say I lean towards that way, but maybe not entirely, not 100% of the time, maybe.
Okay. Because there's in philosophy, I don't know if you've ever heard of logical positivism. It was a philosophy in the early 20th century, and they were all about empirical evidence, that the only factual claims that can be established are those that can be established empirically. Of course, the problem with the philosophy is that you couldn't establish the claim itself by empiricism. So, in other words, all claims must be empirical. So the statement, all claims must be empirical, cannot be empirically demonstrated. And so the movement collapsed. Yes, exactly, David. You understand that completely. Well, yeah, I think in a sense that Christianity, unlike the Eastern religions of Buddhism and all that stuff, is a historical religion. If the things that we claim didn't happen in history, then I'm believing nonsense. A lot of people think that I am, but it's a historical religion, and so you get into the validity of what counts as historical evidence. But I think that is another argument for another day. But
do you use faith?
Faith.
Do you use faith for empirical evidence? So, like, what's an example of Christianity where you use the word faith?
Okay, so my salary, for example. I mean, I've been a believer for 30 years, so my salary at Watchman is 100% supported by donations. I have to. Part of my job is soliciting donations for what I believe. Now, when I started, David, I had 0 donations. I took the job 4 years ago and took it by faith, believing that A, God was calling me to this, and that B, where God calls, he also provides. So without having any proof that I was going to raise the necessary money for my income, I accepted the job and started doing the work without getting paid initially, knowing that, trusting and believing that God would provide for me. And that is a kind of active trust. The Bible says that my God shall supply all your needs, as Paul says in Philippians. If I really believe that, then I can act on it and take a job where I can't see the money initially. Nobody's giving me a paycheck to join. But I know, based on what the Bible says and in my own personal experience, that God will provide. And it's the proverb, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he shall direct your paths. If I didn't really believe that, David, I wouldn't act on it. I wouldn't take a step of faith, taking the job without knowing how much and when and how often my support would come in. That's just one example. I could give you a lot more of how I took a step of faith in.
That seems a little like you see various exploitative preachers kind of preach that same thing to people, and they say,
Sure, absolutely.
you have to have faith, and then people have faith that God's going to pay their bills, even though they don't have the money, or they donated to the church or something. But they're using the same method. They're using the same faith. It's not would you consider that the same amount of evidence?
There's a difference here, David. I think if I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking about exploitative preachers who are always talking about money. Correct?
No, I'm talking about the person who believes, who's being taught to believe that.
Okay,
in any situation, take out the exploitative preacher. Just say anybody who believes that God's going to pay their bills and they don't have the money and it doesn't come. Does that mean that they had the wrong evidence, or?
No, so there's a distinction here, and it's one I've learned in the course of my life. God will provide where, like I said in the beginning, God will provide where he calls you. And there are many instances in Scripture. The first one that comes to mind is the feeding of the 5,000 in the Gospel of John, where there's a multitude of people surrounding Jesus and the disciples, and Jesus turns to one of the disciples and says, Philip, where are we going to get bread for all these people? And Philip says, we don't have enough money, and where are these? We don't have enough money to get food for all these people. Philip's initial response was money. We don't have enough money to buy bread for all these people.
Sure, but
now,
if what I'm saying is that you're using the same word. Even we're both talking about money in both these situations. Maybe both people feel like they're called, and there's no way to know, other than it actually coming true or not, that it is evidence for it. Other than a feeling, it's a trust feeling that doesn't always pan out. That's why it's hard to argue with.
I think
faith, because people can have faith to something that didn't come true, and we can't know why it didn't. It's not predictable in that way.
I think there's a multitude of people that can attest to God's timely provision. And I think these same people, myself included, have been disappointed when we thought God might provide something and he didn't. That does absolutely happen. But I think by and large, for people who have been in the faith for a long time and trusting in God, they've learned the lessons between when God does provide and when he doesn't provide. And when he doesn't provide, it's always a time for reflection and questions and why didn't you provide? But I think the long-term aspect of this is proven through Scripture that God does provide. It's the problem, David, turns out to be our expectations. Now, if I was wrong about taking my job 4 years ago, and God never provided, I wouldn't have been there 6 months. But God has continued to provide, sometimes quite surprisingly, and sometimes right when I need it, out of corners I never thought of. I see it over and over and over again in the last 4 years. So yeah, I think for me, I'll speak personally. For me, when God doesn't provide, I think it's a matter of my own expectations or having false expectations about it. But it's not. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying there's a pat answer for it.
Hear me out. Hear me out here. My goal is not here to attack faith in general.
No, you're not attacking me.
All that stuff.
These are good questions.
My thing is to say it's the same as evidence feels like it doesn't line up. And I'll try to wrap up here, Pierce. Thanks for entertaining our little rabbit trail. It's like you can have the same people will have the same evidence or faith and come to two different conclusions, which we already said a million times. But there's no way to know what went wrong. We just have to trust that God chose something, and it's a lot different than evidence, where like if you look back and what went wrong, he's like, oh, I didn't have this information. But we're going to go on the weeds. I could tell. There's some cool questions. What did you learn about Essie from this conversation? Sorry, Daniel. I'll gladly talk about this with you sometime.
No.
This is Pierce's show and about his video, and I can go forever.
Yeah, I would just ramble too. Sorry, Pierce.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. That was actually great. Probably a different live stream, but that's okay. That's terrific. But yeah, we will probably wrap up here. One thing I wanted to mention before I get into Robert's question there was I just wanted to mention this. You mentioned like quite a few times you'd be like you said you'd be really nervous if you were talking to a woman about abortion out in public, somebody you hardly know, yada yada. I got an upcoming video, hopefully that will be releasing hopefully in the next few months, where I talk to 3 women about abortion all at the same time. So look forward to that one.
Oh my goodness, Pierce.
And then
well, I'll be in an all atheist book club in a couple of weeks. I go once a month.
There you go.
To an atheist book club in Dallas, and in person. It's another book club in addition to our atheist and Christian book club, but I enjoy that. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, we can all eat pizza together.
Sure.
And then we'll wrap up on this question. I'm assuming it was referring to the video we reviewed. Yeah, I think I may have learned like maybe not ask confidence right away. That might be too aggressive of a question. Maybe ease my way in a little bit more. Let that question maybe come up naturally. That might be a better way to do that. Maybe just be more natural in general. What else? I feel like there's other things.
I personally learned that the abortion thing is a difficult conversation. Like it's like it's one I'm not super well versed in. So I want to learn better how to talk about it more than not necessarily how to convince people one way or the other, but actually how to talk about it, how to sort through a lot of the stuff and talk to more root stuff like that. I realized I interrupted you, Pierce. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I think that's all I had. Any final thoughts, Daniel?
I wasn't sure what we were going to end up talking about. I thought I was prepared more to I was thinking more, I was going to be asked what I thought and why I thought it, but it turned out quite well and it's surprisingly different. I did not expect the conversation to go in the different ways that it did. So I appreciate you having me on, and I think you did a good job. I don't think I'll ever be out there doing what you're doing. Not quite to that extent with the cameras on. I do it differently, but I do engage with people of other beliefs often. That's my job. I just have a little different perspective on how I go about it. But I think, Pierce, though, one thing that I saw that you learned, maybe, or at least I learned, or at least want to encourage you to consider more of, is be more of yourself and be less concerned about what SE is, and just let the conversation go, and then you do your own style in a sense, and be more spontaneous, or do it more in accordance with your personality.
Yeah, when you relax, they seem to relax a lot, and it seemed to.
Yeah, right. Because sometimes it looks like you're trying to think of what's the order and what's the next SE question like I should ask, and rather than just letting, she just said something that made me think, and you can respond to it and still be within the confines of a SE question, but you can do it within your own personality. So
do you use an outline on that paper?
No, it is mostly unreadable words that I'm writing. It's mostly what they're saying. I'm not really writing questions or anything like that. It's mostly just like what they're saying, so I can look back down on it and say, this is what they said. Because I get conversations confused. I don't think in this one I did, but in the very next one that I had about abortion, I assumed that, or I thought that they had said they were 100% confident when they weren't. And that's why I write stuff down. Yeah, otherwise I get everything all over the place.
What do you guys think about an outline to kind of give you like a reference point, so you don't have to think super hard about it? You can just glance down and be like, all right, did I ask this? And then you could, ease up a little bit on the, what did I do? What did I forget? No,
Maybe.
not killing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And lastly, I just want to say, like, thank you guys for joining me. And Daniel, you had so many comments that I think were incredibly productive and useful for me, and mostly which I agreed with. I don't think I disagreed with you at all. So maybe on one point or two, but mostly, overwhelmingly, I agreed with you, and I wasn't expecting that, and that was actually really awesome. Yeah.
Well, I like I said, it was a surprising turn. I thought we were going to talk more. Us three were just going to talk more about abortion in general, but that turned out well. I mean, I feel like I probably know SE just as well as anybody that practices it. But I think in general, there's enough fundamental things to have in common. Like I said, my continued difficulty with this whole SE thing will be the underlying atheist ideologies, but I talk to atheists all the time, so it's like I can talk about it more. What I've walked away from this from is a reminder to me that it's more important to talk to individual people about how they see SE and how they practice it, even though they're atheists, and I still might think that there's some motivation there, but to be able to talk to individuals and see and listen to how they do this and why they're doing this, despite the atheist, are some people using SE for atheist evangelism? Yes.
Sure.
Yes, that's continuing because that's why people like it. It's fun in that capacity for y'all in that sense. But are some people, even though they're opposed to Christianity, here's the $24,000 question. If an SE person interviews me about Christianity, would they want me to remain confident about my belief in Jesus? And if they say yes, and they believe it and they're sincere about that, then I know that their motivation is not one of atheist evangelism and it's something else, so that I liked how this conversation shaped, and it was good. Thank you for having me. It's a good idea, Pierce. It was your idea. It was good. I liked it. Thank you.
All right. And I ended on that note.